Imagine spending 13 years in what you thought was the perfect marriage, only to discover, in a single moment, that it was all a lie. Your wife? A fraud. Your children? Not yours. Your entire life? Built on deception. That's exactly what happened to Dr. Nathan Hayes. But instead of breaking down, he decided to burn it all to the ground. Stay with me, because this is a revenge story you won't forget. Dr. Nathan Hayes tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white against the black leather. The soft hum of the engine and the faint classical music playing on the radio did little to ease his tension. Next to him, his wife, Julia, rested her head against the window, still groggy from the anesthesia. The procedure had gone as expected. Wisdom teeth removal wasn't anything out of the ordinary. As a surgeon, Nathan had seen patients come out of sedation in all sorts of states, some weepy, some confused, some downright hilarious. But this was different. This was his wife. The woman he had been married to for 13 years. The mother of his children. The light ahead turned red, and he eased the car to a stop. Out of habit, he reached over to adjust Julia's seatbelt, making sure she was secure. His fingers barely brushed against her shoulder when her eyes snapped open. "You're an idiot," she slurred. Nathan froze, caught off guard by the sudden harshness in her voice. "What?" Julia laughed, a slow, drawn-out giggle that sent a chill down his spine. "I've been cheating on you since day one." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He stared at her, waiting for some sort of sign that this was the anesthesia talking. But she wasn't done. "The kids? They're not even yours. They're from my ex." Nathan couldn't breathe. The world around him blurred. The honk of a car behind him jolted him back to reality. The light had turned green, but he couldn't move. His hands were trembling. Julia sighed, her head lolling back against the seat. "You really are clueless," she mumbled, her voice growing softer. "So easy to fool." The words cut deeper than he thought possible. He finally managed to pull the car over to the side of the road, his mind racing. He turned to look at her, searching for any sign that she wasn't aware of what she was saying, that this was some drug-induced nonsense. But she had already drifted off again, her breathing steady, peaceful, as if she hadn't just set his entire world on fire. Nathan sat in stunned silence, the confession echoing in his head. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. His marriage, his children, the life they had built together, was it all a lie? His hand moved on instinct, reaching for his phone. He opened the voice recorder app and hit record, just in case she said anything else when she woke up again. A few minutes later she stirred. "I never loved you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not once." Nathan felt something inside him break. 13 years. 2 children. A lifetime of shared moments, holidays, anniversaries, late-night talks, whispered promises. Was it all fake? His grip on the phone tightened. The urge to slam his fist into the dashboard, to scream, to demand answers, was overwhelming. But he didn't. Instead, he took a deep breath. Then another. Slowly, his hands steadied. If what she said was true, God, he hoped it wasn't, then he needed more than just a drunken confession under anesthesia. He needed proof. Real proof. By the time he pulled back onto the road, his mind had already shifted from shock to something else. A plan was forming. The house came into view, a place that had once felt like home but now felt foreign, like he was walking into someone else's life. He parked in the driveway and stepped out, forcing his body to move on autopilot. Inside, he helped Julia upstairs, tucking her into bed as gently as ever. The way his hands moved, steady, careful, made him feel sick. How could he still treat her with such care when she had just shattered him? She drifted into sleep without another word. Nathan lingered by the doorway, staring at her peaceful expression. A wave of nausea rolled through him. How long had she been lying to him? How many times had she looked him in the eye and told him she loved him? Had she ever meant it? Downstairs, he collapsed into his desk chair, hands shaking as he pulled out his phone and played back the recording. Her voice, so cruel, so detached, filled the room. I never loved you. Not once. He shut his eyes, letting the pain sink in. Then, slowly, he exhaled. There was work to do. Truth to uncover. And if there was one thing Nathan Hayes had always prided himself on, it was being thorough. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. Hello, yes, I need to hire a private investigator. It's about my wife. Nathan Hayes had always been a man of logic. As a surgeon, his life revolved around facts, evidence, and precision. Feelings were secondary to reason. That was what made him good at his job. He didn't let emotions cloud his judgment. So when Julia's slurred confession shattered the foundation of his life, he didn't lash out. He didn't scream or demand answers. Instead, he did what he had always done. He searched for the truth. The first step was gathering evidence. Nathan didn't believe in coincidences. If Julia had been cheating for 13 years, there had to be signs, messages, transactions, inconsistencies he had ignored because he had trusted her. That trust had made him blind. Not anymore. He started with the basics. Julia's tablet was the first thing he checked. She had a habit of leaving it around the house, trusting that he had no interest in her personal devices. It was password protected, of course. But he knew the code. Her birthday. How ironic. The screen lit up, and within minutes, the cracks in her carefully constructed facade began to show. There were hidden folders, ones that didn't appear in the main photo gallery. Nathan opened them, and his stomach twisted. Pictures. Messages. Hotel bookings disguised as business trips. Conversations that made it clear Julia had never been faithful, not for a single moment. And then he found the emails. Correspondence with a fertility clinic. Discussions about IVF. Sperm donors. All dated before their first child was even conceived. Nathan felt like he couldn't breathe. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the messages, each one confirming what he had feared but hadn't been ready to accept. The children, the ones he had raised, loved, sacrificed for, they weren't biologically his. He set the tablet down, pressing his palms against his temples. The room was spinning. This wasn't just an affair. It was years of deception, layers upon layers of carefully constructed lies. She had planned this. She had made him believe he was a father when he wasn't. Nathan's breath came in slow, measured inhales. He forced himself to stay calm. He wasn't done yet. Next came the financial records. Julia handled most of the household expenses. He had always trusted her with that, assuming she was just more organized. Now he realized that had been another mistake. Credit card statements showed recurring payments to a gym, one Nathan didn't even know she went to. Cash withdrawals that didn't add up. A second bank account, one he had never seen before, with deposits and transactions that painted a picture of a life he hadn't been part of. Nathan documented everything. Screenshots. Photographs. He backed up copies of the emails and financial statements. He wasn't about to confront Julia without proof. She had lied so easily for years, she wouldn't hesitate to do it again if given the chance. But he needed more. That's where Sarah came in. She was a private investigator, recommended by one of his colleagues who had gone through a messy divorce. Nathan called her the morning after Julia's confession. By noon, they were sitting in his office, going through everything he had found. This isn't just an affair, Sarah said after scanning through the documents. This is deception on another level. But you already knew that. Nathan nodded, jaw clenched. I need definitive proof. Surveillance. Bank statements. I want everything. She didn't ask why. She just nodded. Consider it done. Over the next few weeks, Sarah provided him with updates through encrypted emails. Each one chipped away at whatever small hope he had left. Subject, surveillance report. Details. Target observed entering Elite Fitness at 3:20 p.m. Stayed for 2 hours. Left with male identified as Eric Dawson, gym owner. Financial records show consistent payments for personal training sessions. Frequency and amount suggest services beyond standard membership. Attached were surveillance photos. Julia and Eric outside a hotel, too close for it to be innocent. Nathan stared at the pictures, a sick feeling settling in his gut. She had moved on from him before their marriage had even begun. He had spent years believing in something that had never been real. But it still wasn't enough. Nathan wanted every piece of the puzzle. He had one final step left before he could act. One afternoon, while Julia was at the gym, he found himself in their bedroom, staring at her tablet. He knew her passcode. His fingers hovered over the screen before he entered it. It didn't take long. The hidden conversations confirmed what he already knew. Julia and Eric had been meeting for years. There were plans for the future, plans that didn't include Nathan. But the most damning evidence was buried deep in her email archives. Discussions about her secret bank account, messages detailing how she planned to leave once she had enough money. Nathan set the tablet down, his body rigid. She had been waiting for the right moment to walk away. To take the kids, his money, his home, and disappear. The realization settled over him like ice. He had spent 13 years living a lie. But now, for the first time, he was the one in control. Nathan wasn't going to react impulsively. He wasn't going to let rage dictate his actions. He was going to be meticulous. Strategic. Because Julia had taken everything from him. And now, he was going to take it all back. Nathan Hayes had always been a methodical man. His profession required precision. One wrong move in surgery and a life could be lost. Now, that same precision was going to dismantle the life of the woman who had lied to him for over a decade. His initial instinct had been to confront Julia immediately. To throw the evidence in her face, demand answers, force her to see the damage she had done. But that would be reckless. She was too good at deception, too skilled at manipulation. If he acted too soon, she would twist the situation, play the victim, maybe even turn the kids against him. No, he had to be patient. He had to play the long game. And so he planned. First, he needed to get closer to Eric Dawson. The man who had been sleeping with his wife for years was about to become the key to her downfall. Nathan created a new identity. It was simple enough, an alias, a background story that would hold up under casual scrutiny. Alexander Roth. Venture capitalist. Business enthusiast. A man looking for investment opportunities in the fitness industry. He built an online presence, LinkedIn, a few fake business articles referencing past investments, a profile that looked legitimate enough for someone like Eric to take the bait. Once everything was in place, Nathan reached out. Mr. Dawson, I recently moved to the area and have been exploring local businesses with potential for expansion. Your gym has caught my attention. I'd love to discuss a potential investment opportunity that could take your brand to the next level. Let me know if you're open to a conversation. Best. Alexander Roth. The response came within an hour. Mr. Roth, I appreciate your interest. Expansion has been on my radar for a while, and I'd love to discuss it further. Let's set up a meeting. Nathan smirked. The man was eager. Desperate even. It was almost too easy. While Eric was busy chasing dreams of a multi-million-dollar franchise, Nathan was setting up the second phase of his plan, turning Julia into a liability. He needed to hit her where it hurt. And for Julia, that meant money. Nathan combed through financial records, uncovering every hidden transaction, every withdrawal she had made behind his back. Using secure accounts and anonymous methods, he began rerouting small amounts from her hidden savings into an account she wouldn't be able to trace back to him. Nothing drastic, just enough to create inconsistencies that would come back to haunt her when the time was right. But money alone wasn't enough. He needed leverage. That's when he installed the cameras. Tiny, discreet, placed where she wouldn't notice, inside the house, her car, even a small voice recorder in her office. He needed everything, every whispered conversation with Eric, every plan she made, every lie she told. It made his stomach churn to see her in those moments, to listen to the way she spoke about him when she thought he wasn't listening. She was already planning a future without him. She just hadn't realized that he was the one who was truly leaving first. And then there was the final piece. The nail in the coffin. Nathan had already gathered undeniable proof that the children weren't biologically his. But that wasn't enough. He needed something that would ensure Julia couldn't manipulate the divorce proceedings in her favor. He needed Eric's DNA. It had to be subtle. If Eric suspected anything, he could warn Julia. So Nathan played it carefully. When their meeting finally happened, it took place in an upscale restaurant, the kind that would make a man like Eric feel important. Nathan played the role of the confident investor perfectly. He talked about market potential, franchise expansion, branding strategies. He let Eric believe he was in control of the conversation. Then, at just the right moment, Nathan excused himself to the restroom. Before returning, he made a quick stop by the bar, casually swapping out Eric's water glass with a near-identical one he had prepared earlier. A simple trick, a clean swab from the rim before switching it back. Eric never noticed. By the time they finished their meeting, Eric was convinced that he was on the verge of something big. He promised to follow up with numbers, business plans, projections. Nathan simply smiled and shook his hand, knowing that in a few days, the DNA results would come back confirming what he already suspected. By the end of the week, everything was in place. Julia thought she was in control, that she was pulling the strings. But she had no idea that she was the one standing in a carefully laid trap. Nathan had the financial records, the surveillance footage, the DNA proof. The stage was set. Now, it was time to burn her world to the ground. Nathan had spent weeks meticulously preparing for the moment when every secret would come crashing down. Every piece of evidence was assembled with precision, and every detail had been carefully planned to ensure that the lives of those who had betrayed him would collapse without warning. His calculated strategy began with a subtle but devastating maneuver aimed at crippling Eric's gym business, a move designed to trigger a series of irreversible events. Using an encrypted email sent from a throwaway account, Nathan submitted a comprehensive report to the tax authorities detailing numerous financial discrepancies in Eric's establishment. The dossier contained a mix of genuine and manipulated documents that portrayed a clear pattern of systematic tax evasion. In the report, the allegations were precise. Eric had been misappropriating funds for years, concealing transactions and redirecting money through various personal accounts. Although the evidence was not sufficient for an immediate arrest, it was enough to spark an official investigation that would soon bear heavy consequences. Within a mere 3 days, the repercussions began to manifest. The IRS, acting on the anonymous tip, swiftly froze Eric's business accounts, causing an abrupt halt to all financial operations. Payroll was disrupted, rent payments fell behind, and suppliers, faced with uncertainty, stopped delivering essential supplies. Eric's once thriving gym was suddenly suffocated under a crushing financial strain, all before he had a chance to fully comprehend the situation. Meanwhile, Nathan was already orchestrating the next phase of his plan, a phase that targeted the personal lives of the betrayers. An inconspicuous package was dispatched to Eric's wife, Lauren. Inside the package were neatly organized printouts of emails, hotel receipts, and surveillance photographs, each item a testament to years of hidden betrayals. Among the contents lay a USB drive loaded with audio recordings that had been discreetly captured from hidden devices placed in Julia's car and office. One particular recording, in which Julia's tone conveyed a disturbing mix of amusement and contempt as she dismissed her past deceptions, provided indisputable evidence of her duplicity. Although no dramatic confrontations occurred in that moment, the cumulative effect of the revelations was devastating. By the end of the day, Lauren had taken decisive action. She filed for divorce and used social media as a platform to expose the affair publicly. The scandal quickly spread throughout their close-knit community, where the ensuing public judgment left no room for recovery. The meticulously maintained image of a perfect family was now irreparably tarnished. At home, Julia remained oblivious to the cascading consequences unfolding around her. Unaware of the frozen accounts and the ongoing IRS investigation, she returned to a house that would soon become a stage for the final act of Nathan's carefully laid plan. That evening, she entered a living room where Nathan had arranged a neat stack of documents on the coffee table, a silent presentation of her accumulated misdeeds. There was no outburst, no raised voice. Instead, the evidence was laid out systematically. First came the bank statements that revealed hidden financial transactions she had desperately tried to conceal. Following these were a series of emails documenting her secret communications with Eric, plans to abandon Nathan, discussions of financial gain, and a clear roadmap of betrayal. The final and most damning piece was the DNA test results, which irrefutably confirmed that the children he had raised were not biologically his. Nathan's demeanor throughout this confrontation remained unyieldingly calm and measured. His eyes, devoid of emotion, communicated a finality that left no room for negotiation. Rather than engaging in heated arguments or resorting to dramatic accusations, he allowed the overwhelming weight of the evidence to speak for itself. The silent room, filled only with the rustle of papers and the sound of a clock ticking, bore witness to the collapse of a lifetime built on deceit. Julia was left with no alternative but to accept the undeniable truth, and the ultimatum was clear. She had to sign the divorce papers and agree to the uncompromising terms that stripped her of any claim to financial support, the family home, or custody of the children. In the midst of the unfolding ruin, Nathan methodically secured every document and ensured that each piece of evidence was properly archived for future legal proceedings. The final instructions were delivered in a quiet yet unrelenting manner, a directive that left no doubt about the permanence of her loss. With a terse notification that she had 1 week to pack her belongings and vacate the shared home, Nathan left the premises, leaving behind a silence that was heavy with regret and irrevocable change. The fallout from these events extended far beyond the confines of their household. The repercussions of Nathan's calculated moves reverberated through the local community, where whispers and rumors spread rapidly. Neighbors and acquaintances began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with the scandal that had upended what had once been a picture-perfect family. Eric's business, now crippled by the IRS investigation and financial instability, quickly deteriorated, and his reputation suffered an irreparable blow. The scandal served as a stark warning to all who might be tempted by deceit and betrayal. Nathan's actions, though cold and unyielding, were not driven by a momentary lapse of emotion. They were the product of careful, strategic planning, an effort to reclaim his dignity and ensure that every lie was exposed. His decision to dismantle the lives of those who had wronged him was a deliberate act of retribution, meant to serve as a final reckoning. In his mind, the calculated destruction of Julia's world was not an act of impulsive revenge, but a necessary measure to restore truth and integrity to his shattered life. As night fell, the stillness that enveloped the empty home was a poignant reminder of the irreversible changes that had taken place. The echoes of betrayal and the collapse of carefully constructed facades would continue to haunt the community, serving as a lasting testament to the high cost of living a lie. Nathan's resolute determination had set in motion a series of events that not only punished those responsible for the deceit but also marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where truth and accountability would prevail, no matter the price. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Julia was gone. Her absence wasn't marked by some grand farewell or a desperate attempt at reconciliation, just an empty closet, a few missing suitcases, and a sense of finality that Nathan had been waiting for. He had given her a week to pack and leave, but she didn't even last that long. Whether it was the shame, the fear, or simply the weight of the truth crashing down on her, she disappeared in just 3 days, taking nothing of real value with her. Nathan stood in the doorway of what used to be their shared bedroom, looking at the space that now felt foreign. The bed was unmade, a few stray belongings scattered across the dresser. It didn't matter. Soon, this place wouldn't be his problem anymore. The house had been listed for sale immediately after Julia signed the divorce papers. There was no reason to hold on to a place built on lies. He had no interest in lingering in the ruins of a life that had never been real. Every photo had been taken down, every memory locked away in storage boxes that he wasn't sure he'd ever open again. The only thing left was to finalize the sale and walk away for good. But there was still one last thing he had to do. The children. Nathan had spent countless sleepless nights deciding how to handle the truth. They weren't biologically his. They had been born out of deception. And yet he had raised them. He had tucked them in at night, held them when they were scared, taught them to ride bikes, read bedtime stories, celebrated birthdays. Could DNA really erase all of that? The answer was complicated. Nathan wasn't a cruel man. As much as he had wanted to cut all ties, he couldn't bring himself to destroy their world in the same way Julia had destroyed his. They didn't deserve that. But the truth still had to be told. Sitting at his desk, he pulled up an email draft that had been sitting there for days. The recipients were two men he had never met, two men whose DNA was woven into the lives of the children he had loved as his own. They had a right to know. The email was short, direct, free of emotion. You may not know me, but I know about you. The children you fathered, unknowingly, are growing up without any knowledge of their real origins. Attached are documents confirming paternity, medical records, and details you may find relevant. What you choose to do with this information is up to you. But you have the right to know. And they have the right to know who they really are. He read it over one last time. Then, without hesitation, he clicked send. It was done. For the first time in weeks, Nathan exhaled, feeling the weight slowly lift from his chest. There was nothing left to hold him here. Moving day came quicker than expected. The house, once full of warmth and laughter, now felt like a hollow shell. He loaded the last box into the moving truck and took one final look around. There was no nostalgia, no sentimentality, just a quiet relief. On the kitchen counter, he left a single envelope. Not for Julia, he had nothing left to say to her, but for whoever might find it next. Inside was a short note. This house belonged to a man who spent years living a lie. It was once filled with love, or at least the illusion of it. Now, it's just a structure. May the next owners fill it with something real. With that, he closed the door behind him and walked away. The road stretched ahead, leading him toward a city where no one knew his name, where he wasn't the man who had been betrayed, where he could finally start over. The past was behind him. And for the first time in years, Nathan Hayes was free.